Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ready, Set, Action. Today, you're joining Deborah Horowitz and myself, Christina Whitmer. We're going to discuss 3 tips to avoid the cost of poor communication and planning. So, stay tuned. So,
Welcome. Hello. And we're into another week. How's it going?
going good with me. I'm ready for fall to steal your thoughts there.
Yes, let's please bring it in. Get rid of hurricane season and have that. It's just a distant memory for.
For sure, for sure. So. Well, cool. Why don't you set us up? What's going on today?
Yeah, so today we're talking about avoiding the cost of poor communication and planning. And, really, communication plays such a critical role in every aspect of business. And I'm I think I've been saying this for like 30 years that it's the one thing that can always be improved upon. I think we spend a lot of time with looking at processes and finances and, investments of technology and all of those other things. But communication or poor communication can really trip up a business very quickly and cost you in like missed deadlines or loss of clients or a whole host of different things can occur when you don't take a moment to really look at planning out the communication structure.
Mhm.
Right. So I think we're going to delve into that today and provide some actionable tips on really how to ensure that each project that you take on for your organization is set up for success.
Nice. Yes. Otherwise, what's the point, right?
What's the point, right? We shoot ourselves in the foot all day long, but that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, what do you have for us for tip number one?
Tip number 1 is about clarity with the expectations and your goals. Um, a lot of people, I've done goal setting with clients for years and years and years, and I would say 7 out of 10 goals are not what we call very, actionable, detailed enough. They just lack something, right? So as you're going along your journey trying to get to the goals, a lot of times you can say you reached them because you said, I want to increase followers or I want to do this. But until you start putting more detail with, what that means, it's kind of, I don't know, you're cheating the system just a little bit. So, generally in that realm, I think what's most important is to break things up. You have the business, you have things, but break as much as you can into projects or, so when you think about a business, all that it has to do to grow and sustain and deliver, you've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got service, you've got client retention. You have all these things within the business. So when you break those up, what you can do is define what you're doing, try to set a timeline, so quarterly or whatever makes sense for you. And then if there's set budgets, try to establish that. So then you start to have project plans or however you organize your business, try to have those into groups. And then within that, you want to look at, okay, how do you establish measurable goals and what are the key performance indicators, the KPIs? Very important to look at that and set those for this project. So I still think you can have total business goals in a different way, but I think the more you can break things into bite-sized chunks, you can kind of handle it a little bit. So, some of the goal planning, and I know you guys have probably heard a lot of the different types, but the SMART goals are one of the ones that I've heard of most frequently, and I certainly have used the most. In fact, I will put a PDF of the SMART goals, sort of, the graphic, the diagram in the chat later so that we can take a look at those. But SMART goals are just very specific. And of course, it's an acronym. So S is for specific. What do you want accomplished? And importantly, who's involved internally, externally, whatever it is. So specific, what's part of that goal? What is that? So measurable, what can be measured? How do you measure progress? It could be client, satisfaction from a 6 to a 7, or it could be followers grown by 10%, or it could be having more qualification calls, set, whether they, succeed or not, or it could be more successful calls that go to the next stage. So break these into groups and try to set measurable goals that you can check, you can follow and watch. Achievable is the A part of SMART, and what's interesting about that is kind of makes you step back and say, do you have the skills, or do you need to get them elsewhere? It kind of helps you assess the team part, right? Is this something I can do, whether it's my skills or even time? So, really, is it achievable what I'm looking at? Because there's no point in, sometimes we set these things up, which I don't know, maybe some people aspire and that's encouraging for them, but you do want these things to be achievable so that you can continue to grow in increments. The R is for relevant. So, why are you doing it now? Just make sure you're understanding why this project exists. This is a good one for me because sometimes I get excited about something and I'm like, oh, yes, we all have to do this. And, this is why, but then if I think about relevant, is now the time? Should I wait to the beginning of the year? Should I wait? Why am I doing it? It kind of helps me step back from the excitement of doing something new, which I love. And then time bound is, specific to what's the deadline, what's realistic. So 3 months, 30 days, whatever it is, set these goals. And when you do the SMART goals formula, you tend to have, a nice sort of, project plan for everything that you're doing. You can assign someone to, keep track of it on a weekly or a monthly basis. You can just start to, it's something you can put up in the wall, and then you can think, what's next. So, I would encourage everyone to think about the business, maybe block it into groups, and then start thinking about what these things are that need to be achieved and what goals. I mean, sales, marketing, those are obvious, ones that are always going to have something, but there may be others. I'm sure you've seen it too. So that's sort of tip number one, is this clarity with expectations and goals. So have you used the SMART goals? I'm sure you have.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite go-to. When
Mm-hmm.
I'm just establishing the overall goals, and
Mm-hmm.
we do a heck of a lot of project work here, so
Yeah.
you know, um, we're all about defining that in the client relationship as well.
Oh, right, right, right.
And as well as our business. So I think we just use it so often in
Mm-hmm.
every in every aspect, but
Yeah.
it's very, very helpful. And like you said, that relevant part is like, it does make you take that step back and think, okay, do I really need to do it right now,
Mm-hmm.
or is it something, like you said, that can wait until the beginning of
Yeah.
the year? So
I should
yeah,
do it more
those
with my
shiny
clients.
baubles get us all
Oh, yeah.
excited.
For sure, for sure. I should do that more with my clients because I do it initially, but probably doing it more with them would help that relationship to be with the accountability and some other things. So I probably need to do more of that with clients, even more than what I'm doing now. So cool. Well, you got a tip number two for us?
I do, of course. I came
Awesome.
prepared. So it's tip number 2 is to really look at fostering open and transparent communication. And
Okay.
it sounds easy, right? It sounds so easy. It's like, okay, well, everybody can read my mind and they know exactly what I mean when I say something, right? I was talking to a CEO, I think about a couple weeks ago, and she was telling me the story. We were talking about training and communication, and she was saying one of her managers had a recent hire that came on board, and they were all excited about this hire. And the manager had given her an assignment, um, and then went on her merry way.
Hmm.
So the new hire had reached out to the manager once for some clarification before she got started on the project. Well, the manager never saw that email. Okay, so about 2 weeks after the assignment was given to this new hire, manager comes back in and is looking for an update.
Mm-hmm.
And the new hire says, "Well, I haven't even started it yet." And she's like, "Why?" And she said, "Well, you never responded to my email." And so, okay, take a
Mm-hmm.
moment, as that's a learning moment to say, really think about giving them the power,
Mm-hmm.
right, to be accountable for that project. Set those expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're hiring Gen Z, remember that they have not had a job in corporate America before,
Right, right, right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that things move differently and operate differently. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important in that scenario, or even with all of the people that are in your business or with your clients, to set those regular communication intervals.
Mm-hmm.
If she had done that, if she had like checked in on her a few days after she gave her the assignment to just
Right.
say, "Were there any questions? Are you good to go?"
Mm-hmm.
Then they wouldn't have lost 2 weeks,
Sure.
of work for the project. So lessons learned, right? But also incorporate active listening when you are talking and giving those projects out to your employees, and really get them to repeat back to you some of the things that you think you're being very clear on. There could be just a misunderstanding at the gate,
Right,
before
right.
everything gets started. So just really think about that. And then as the project is ongoing, remember to get those feedback loops established so
Yeah.
that you're getting that feedback from your internal people, from your clients, and you're making those adjustments along the
Mm-hmm.
way. I like to set up like weekly check-ins, with the people that are working on projects with me. So, and if you can use progress reports, or we call something similar to that a WIP document, which is a work in process. And so we have something that's a shared document for both us and for our clients, that
Yeah.
kind of outlines what we're working on, what our deadlines are, if we need something from them, and their deadline to
Mm-hmm.
get that to us. So they might have some graphics, or they might have a video that we're going to use in our recruitment marketing efforts. So we're waiting on them to get
Mm-hmm.
that before we can move to the next step. So everybody can see at any moment who's working on what,
Mm-hmm.
where things are. So it doesn't necessarily involve an email or a phone call or a text message. They can just go to that document, kind of see where things are. But then
Mm-hmm.
we still have like the weekly check-ins to make sure that nothing's changed on their end, and also internal weekly check-ins to make sure that we are progressing with
Yeah.
our timelines in a positive manner. So we use that. But I think without that, clients will often wonder and maybe even worry without saying anything, like, where are they? Is that going to be
Mm-hmm.
done on time? What happens if it's not done on time? And they start to build up this angst internally for no reason at all, because everything is moving along just
Yeah.
fine.
No, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, so being transparent, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is definitely critical.
Yeah. When you were starting to tell the story, I could just feel the danger signals coming from what you were going to tell. But you know what it was interesting because I was thinking of myself early in agency days where, it wasn't uncommon for someone to be unavailable or not respond as fast as you wanted them to. But the ownership part made a lot of sense to me. Like, I guess I definitely felt like if it didn't happen, it would be my problem. So whatever that communication was from the ownership perspective, I think I felt that. But maybe, especially with generational differences, maybe we're not speaking the right language, or really saying, it's your job to make sure this happens. You know, if if it's not going to meet the deadline, I don't know, but that's tricky. I mean, I have been in situations where you are waiting for someone to get back and it goes past the deadline because something changes and they're not really ready to move.
Yeah.
But without even a lot of, I was just sort of reflecting, without a lot of conversation, I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is. But maybe it's the ownership piece, I think, is understanding who is carrying that ball down the court. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
And I think, especially for the Gen Zs, they just they're not accustomed to taking that initiative.
Hmm.
They're more accustomed to having that input from parents, right?
Hmm.
You do this, this, and this, and they do
Yeah.
that, that, and that, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that it's important for us to understand that the way we communicate maybe to a 50-year-old on the team is going to be
Hmm.
different than a
Yeah.
20-year-old on the team. And we have to morph a little bit in
Hmm.
our conversations and our communication,
Yeah.
to make sure that things are clear and that they are feeling that they have that sense of empowerment and
Right.
responsibility, like you were saying,
Hmm.
that ownership of those deliverables and what to do if something's not right, or they're
Hmm.
getting you know some sort of roadblock on their end
Right.
in order to deliver. That open door policy, that has been around forever in
Hmm.
corporate America. Okay, you can just walk in anytime and tell me what you need and what's going
Hmm.
on. uh, Being able to express that and
Yeah.
to let them know I'm available during these hours, or on this day is my open door day,
Hmm.
and you can come in and talk to me about anything and everything.
Sure.
But just being able to have that transparency, I think will really help in any situation.
Yeah, and with more hybrid and remote work, it's probably, that other challenge is that you have to, grabbing someone as they're walking down the hall is, you're not going to be able to do that. You have to figure out how that what are the other ways to communicate. So
Exactly.
it's a
Yeah.
good one. Good. Anything else for that one?
Yeah, that was all I had. What do you think
Awesome.
about tip number 3?
So, for tip number 3, it's a bit about being proactive with risks and potential issues. And I think it kind of feeds into what you just talked about. So, from both sides, there's ways, since you brought up that story, I think we should keep going with it. But, both of those people could have proactively managed the risks in this situation, right? So, the person who received the assignment, they could have asked, who should I go to if I have questions, right? Are there more people, like who else can help advise me? Like there should be ideally more than one person, unless it's just a two-person group that they can sort of ask questions to. So that would be a nice question. So I would say, if you're especially younger generation or anyone, when you're receiving a project, ask what you need then or shortly after, because that is your right, to get all the information you need to be successful. So almost having a follow-up questions, you could I sort of build that into your process, right? So a couple questions: who should I go to? How do I know if this is off track? Will you check in with this at in 3 days, right? like
Yeah.
like set yourself up for success. And of course, some of those are learned over time, but we're here to tell you that those are some things that you should demand now, is that make
Yeah.
sure, and I know a lot of people in still agency life that, things get dropped on you. And when you're new, sometimes they really get dropped on you. And it's almost like, prove to me that you've got this. But that's why you need to, your professionalism will show if you say, okay, give me, can I come back in 2 hours with a couple questions? Or can I, like, schedule it before you leave, know ahead of time that you earn the right to make sure you have clarity, but you also need time to review it, and whatever it is. So elevate yourself and expect that professionalism, that respect, so that you can be properly prepared. And obviously for the other person, knowing that this is a new person, one thing we're doing here more and more is these playbooks, which help us know, how do you do things, how do you do this, how do you do that. And in that instance, there may be a how do you manage a project for someone,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
those steps, you can just have 5 steps. And how do you know if you're doing it right? Once you do that, everyone has access to that. So when you see issues like that, you have to solve them as a manager, as an owner, whoever you are. That is your job. So I think what's important is, so generally with the risk and issues. So you have to, as you watch your business, if that happened to me, I would say, you know what, that is a problem. No matter whose fault it was, it's a problem for my business. So how do I solve that problem, right? Extra
Right.
levels of communication, clarity with expectations, and maybe some guidelines on how to manage a project that everyone can use, right? So it's my, I have to succeed. That's what I have to do. So figure out and start every time you see an issue, small or big, jot it down so that you can solve it. To me, that gets solved with the process, right? So you talked
Yeah.
about the other stuff with communication. Well, you can start solving these things with some processes. Contingency plans, as the business owner, the person, like if that happened, for all you know, that person could have gotten sick and ended up in the hospital, right? Especially if you're
Right.
gone. So there's a million things that could have happened. What would you have happened if that person didn't do the task regardless of the reason, right? So
Right.
what are those contingencies plans? So there's definitely some accountability to make sure that was handed off properly and in motion. And like you
Yeah.
said, we use Trello. There's a lot of other ClickUp and other tools to manage projects
Hmm.
that probably would need to be in place for that, because then as a manager, I can glance and I can see things are moving, right? They're not stuck
Yeah.
at some stage. So,
Yeah.
that's another process, is to support these efforts. And then the other thing is really, flexibility, adaptability into responding to unexpected challenges. And I think as a manager, if you can start to embrace this and talk about this, that's where you can also teach the younger people on your team. So, you know, if that person maybe was just had a little more sense of, maybe they weren't so afraid of doing the wrong thing, they might
Right.
have started to do something, or something, So just kind of, figure out the flexibility level, how do you adapt to unexpected things? Like, I couldn't get my manager, but I know this project needs to be to the client in 2 years. That manager's, something happened. They're on a cruise and I cannot
Yeah.
get them. What else would I do? Like, you got to
Right.
develop that mindset. We talked about culture recently, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Culture of problem solving and teamwork and figuring things out. You have to take away a little bit of the fear of doing things wrong sometimes, because
Yeah.
you want that risk and go get them kind of attitude. You may
Right.
get some weird like things you never thought might happen. um,
Exactly. Exactly. And there's that multitasking too, where,
oh,
okay, I'm stuck on getting this piece of it. Can I move on
mhm,
to another section and work on
yeah,
that while I'm waiting on this to happen?
right,
And, sometimes that needs to be taught. That's not always
right,
instinctive in everyone. And
that's
we
smart.
we cannot expect people are going to tackle a project in the way that we would,
You're
because everybody
100%.
works differently, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right, because that may have said do something and then put it into a PowerPoint to whatever, right? You can actually start creating that PowerPoint while you're waiting for that piece. So that's, that linear mindset. Do you ever remember in school, I had the one teacher would give you the whole this long test, like a pop-up test, and he said, please read all of this, all of the questions first, and then begin. And he told you, he said it like 3 times, and then you read it, and it's all these questions, people writing, and then all of a sudden people start turning in thing. You're like, what's going on? And you go to the bottom, it says skip to whatever and turn it in. And you're like,
Right.
did you ever have that?
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
lesson learned. Like you
Right.
told
It
me
was
like at
like,
least 2 or 3
yeah,
times, like read all of the questions.
exactly. It was just like skip 1 to 15, put your
Yeah,
name here and turn it in, you know. Yeah.
man, I should do that. Like I guess I didn't have the opportunity, but I would actually love to give that test now that I think about it.
Yeah, that I mean, that's not a bad, uh, uh, I guess, test to see if
Mm-hmm.
people are actually following instructions, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yep.
Yeah,
So anyway, so that's tip 3. So, I think in conclusion, we have a couple of good actionable items here. So anything
yeah.
else you want to sort of sew it all up with?
No, I just think, really be aware of how much that poor communication can actually cost you,
Mm-hmm.
and that it is worth your time and effort to put in some sort of structure,
Right.
internally as well as externally to your customers, looking for that feedback,
Mm-hmm.
or being able to communicate with them if you're doing ongoing project type of work with them, and then just make sure that you're looking at mitigating all of those risks
Yeah.
along the way and keeping things moving forward with the business. And I love what you said at the beginning about looking at the overall business in that project mindset as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And just, what's the old saying? How do you eat an elephant? You bite it off one bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it does feel like, in small business that you are trying to eat that elephant,
Mm-hmm.
and this makes it so much more manageable, and
Right.
feels like you have more control over the
Yeah.
situation.
Otherwise, I just will get too stressed. So awesome. Well, good. Well, I'm going to wrap us up. We appreciate you guys listening today. Thank you for joining us. I hope you see us next time for Ready, Set, Action. It's Deborah Horowitz and Christina Whitmer. You can follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube. We're also on Spotify, and we hope to see you next week. Take care.